Home buyers, are you tired of losing out in multiple offer situations? Hi, I'm Rhonda Haran, professional realtor in Metro Atlanta for over 20 years. And today I'm going to give you my 7 tips for winning in a multiple offer situation. First, it's imperative that you're working with a professional realtor, someone who's well connected in the community, someone who knows how to put together a complete and aggressive contract, and someone who's going to negotiate on your behalf. Number 1, make sure that your realtor is putting together a complete and clean offer. And that may sound obvious and simplistic, but you'd be surprised how many times on our listings we get offers that are incomplete, have mistakes, have blanks, have missing amendments or exhibits. So it's really important to make sure that that offer is super tight, well put together, and complete before it's submitted to the listing agent. In a multiple offer situation where a listing agent and seller is reviewing maybe 20 plus offers, you can be sure that that incomplete and sloppy offer is going to the bottom of the stack. So don't let that happen to you. Number 2, earnest money. Historically, in the Atlanta market, earnest money has been around 1% of the offer price. But in this market, be prepared to offer significantly higher, probably in the 5% range. Keep in mind that your earnest money demonstrates to the seller your willingness and ability to close on that property. And as long as you're following the terms of the contract, your earnest money should never be in jeopardy. In fact, it's applied to your down payment at the closing. Number 3, the due diligence period or the inspection period. So short and sweet is what you want to do here. I've seen a handful of buyers in this market in the past year remove the right to inspect completely. I don't recommend that. I think everyone should get a home inspection when you're purchasing this valuable asset. Just make sure that that due diligence period is short, under 5 days, and make sure, again, if you're working with a great realtor, they'll have wonderful inspectors to recommend to you, and make sure that that inspector is on standby and has appointments available as soon as that home goes under contract, so you can get them out within a day or two and get that due diligence period out of the way. You can also agree up front that between you and the seller that you are getting an inspection, but perhaps you're saying up front that you won't request repairs. And so that's a good way to still get your inspection, make sure you're ruling out any major issues with the property, but you're letting the seller know, hey, we're not going to nitpick you, and, we're not going to worry about the little things, and you can write that agreement up front, and we can give you more tips on that. Number 4, the appraisal. Almost all home buyers in the market today, when they're in a competitive situation, are removing the appraisal contingency. So if you're able to do that, that's a win for the seller, so they don't have to worry about, one appraiser coming in a couple of weeks from now appraising the property below the offer price or the contract price. Just make sure that you're working with your agent and your lender to understand what all is involved there, and that you're able to make up the difference if there is an appraisal gap. Which brings me next to financing, number 5. Cash, of course, is king, but the reality is the vast majority of us are getting a mortgage when we purchase a home. The key is to have your pre-approval done before you start the home buying process. And there's a big difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. So a pre-qualification is simply having a conversation with a lender about your assets and debt and income and giving you an idea of what you can afford. That's not what we're talking about. We want a full pre-approval where you've actually completed the loan application, turned in all of your documents, it's been reviewed by the lender, better yet, the underwriter, and so you have a fully underwritten loan. You're just waiting to have a property to go along with it. So having a strong letter like that will give you the advantage over someone who hasn't gone through that process just yet. So make sure you check that box before you start looking for property. Number 6 is the closing date. This is an easy one. If you have some flexibility, find out in advance what the best closing date is for the seller and write that into your contract. That's an easy win. And often, the sellers have some constraints, and so that gives them some flexibility to get what they need to get done on their end. Which brings me to number 7, and that is the possession date. So in some cases, it might be a huge benefit to the seller to keep possession of the home post-closing. And if you're getting a loan, there are some lender limitations on that, up to 60 days that the seller can stay in the house before it's considered an investment property. But that's an easy win, particularly if the seller doesn't know where they're headed, where they're moving yet. That gives them some breathing room to figure that out and get out of the house. So that's oftentimes a huge win for both buyer and seller. So those are my 7 tips for winning in a multiple offer situation. We actually have more, but you'll have to work with us to find out those. However, if you'd like to keep up with all of our tips every week, you can hit subscribe below. For more in-depth conversations on all things real estate, subscribe to my podcast, The Real Deal with Rhonda, and follow us on Instagram. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.